Welcome back to the channel. Thank you guys for watching these videos. And today is all about the power of a jig and a spinnerbait. Now, if you watch some of my other videos, I kind of have a really unique relationship with a jig and a spinnerbait. These were the first baits that I've ever won big tournaments on, the first baits that I really ever won any money at all on. But these baits are very intricate. They are very detailed when it comes to the days that you need to be throwing. What I was taught was you need a perfect day for a jig and a spinnerbait. And there are periods of times where they don't ever bite those baits. It doesn't matter if you throw them from sunup to sundown, you may not catch but a bass on them. That's just the way they are. But the other side of that is there are days where if you're not throwing them, you're not going to win any money because those are the two baits that just catch the winning fish, catch the money fish. And I don't know why that is, other than they're not a realistic looking presentation. The jig being, very similar to this, that the skir, it just doesn't look anything like a fish. So I think on days where the fish can really see the bait good, they're not going to bite them. And there's just times a year where the fish are really keyed in on eating what they want to eat. They are an opportunistic feeder, but that doesn't always mean that they're gonna take the opportunity to bite that, because that doesn't necessarily look anything like a fish. And the same thing with a jig. It just does not look real appealing to them some days. Other days, and in certain fisheries, these baits are just the way to go most of the year. So I really want to try to backtrack on some of my other videos where I've told you my philosophy with jig fishing in the pre-spawn. That's usually not what I'm trying to do, but I always do keep it honest just for the fact that it's a completely different presentation than my spinnerbait, my lipless crankbait, my square bill, my medium diving crankbait, my chatterbait, all moving baits that have a lot of vibration. This is a bait that I can fish in those same type areas, just extremely slow. Days when the fishing is tough, extremely slow is the way to go. So I'm never looking to seek out these baits, but when that day comes, whatever it may be, if it's cloudy, rainy, windy, whatever the reason is, maybe they're just really on docks and every time you pitch a jig underneath those docks, it gets bit. Days where the feeling is right, you can load the boat on those baits. Now, I posted a video last year about never flip a jig in the summer. I want to backtrack on that as well because some lakes are just spinnerbait jig heavy. And the jig, most of those highland reservoirs where I think their main forage is crawfish, in lakes that have current, a jig is just a really powerful tool on those lakes. So a jig is going to always be part of the equation on those types of lakes. And then for whatever reason, maybe there's just an abundance of shad, a spinnerbait is always part of an equation on certain lakes. So maybe the lake you fish, the lake I fish the most, Gunnersville, I don't see Gunnersville being a big spinnerbait lake. Most of the year, it's hard to catch anything on a spinnerbait. Sometimes you better be throwing it, like a lot of lakes. And the same thing with the jig. The pre-spawn, it can catch some fish, it can catch some big fish, but that's typically not my plan A when I go out when the water's cold. And that could be how your lake is, or your lake could be one of those spinnerbait jig heavy lakes where if it's on, you're gonna get beat if you're not throwing it. And I don't necessarily know why these lakes are like that. And some lakes are soft plastics heavy. When I think of Florida, I think of all the different soft plastics, not just worms and creature baits, but also flukes. For whatever reason, baits that you can fish painfully slow on the bottom, dead stick them, don't move them for 10 seconds, shake them a little bit and then leave them for another 10 seconds, just works really well in Florida. And then there's some lakes where Lake Martin, Lake Eufaula, those lakes come to mind where a spinnerbait in brush piles, a spinnerbait in shallow grass, a spinnerbait, around gator grass or up on the bank, always seems to be a player. You better have one tied on if you go there in the spring or the fall. And Martin's the same way. It's got a lot of spotted bass in it. And if you go there in the spring and you don't at least dedicate some of your day to that, you're probably going to get beat. The tournament very well could be won on that. And it's just one of those players, just one of those lakes for whatever reason. So those baits, like I said earlier in the video, you need a perfect day for a spinnerbait and a jig to work, but don't not know what lake you're fishing on. If it's a staple on those lakes, you better have it tied on, no matter what, and no matter what time of year, no matter what the conditions are, just have it tied on and have it, you know, readily available, because for whatever reason, those baits, the staples, the oldest, you know, school baits that has ever made, they just tend to work really good on certain places, no matter what the conditions are. So try that, guys. If you have a spinnerbait or a jig lake, man, you better get good with those, and then be looking for the windows of opportunity that could open at any given time on all the other lakes. So thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you on the water.